Before we get started, a big thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon and on Twitch, with the Patreon people coming up on screen now. A big thank you to my legendary supporters Mike, Kira, Obi-Wan Canty, and Shao Quinn. Thank you guys for the support. I really appreciate it. If you would like to help support me and the channel, then you can head over to twitch.tv/mandatoryquest and drop a sub over there. Or you can go over to patreon.com/mandatoryquest and become a Patreon member for some early access to some videos and some behind the scenes stuff. Okay, so then, the Bruiser, formerly known as the Brute. This was a class that I think had some issues from the original printing, in the sense that, you know, it had one of the weaker attack modifier decks. It kind of had like a little bit of a tanky build to it, but it was quite weak in comparison to other characters' tanking builds, like kind of later on. It had a really fun movement-based build, which I really enjoyed playing. So there was definitely like some kind of cards that you can pick out on the original Brute that were a lot of fun. So hopefully they're kind of using some of those themes that they had there and kind of improving on them, and then perhaps giving like more of a tanky build, or just give them a little bit more stuff to play with, and hopefully maybe not just destroy them where, well, in the perks department as well. That was the other problem. Decent CC. Yeah, also they had pretty decent crowd control as well with Provoking Roar. They had some immobilize abilities as well. Not too bad. Some good push, some good pull. Yeah, they definitely had some good things in their arsenal. You are a strong melee fighter with a large pool of hit points, but if you run into the fray without using any defensive abilities, you may find yourself near death quite quickly. Fortunately, you have a number of tools to help reduce incoming damage. If you intend on using more offensive abilities, you may need to pick your spots to attack more carefully to avoid taking too many hits. You have many powerful melee attack abilities with an area effect that are great when enemies clump up for you. When you can't naturally find groups of enemies next to each other, you also have a variety of abilities that push or pull to move the enemies into place. I think that everything else here is pretty much the same. Hand size, I believe, has remained the same, and I think health also seems to be the same. So let's take a look at the perks first, because I think that that's gonna... We did that last time, and I think I preferred doing it that way, because then we get a bit of a general sense of like what the character can do. And obviously this was an area that definitely felt like the character was hard done by before. So this is definitely an area that could have been improved, or should have been improved. So you got the classic replace one -1 card with 1/1. Great value. Replace one -1 card with one shield 1 rolling card. That's excellent, because you're essentially thinning here by taking out a -1 and giving yourself a shield rolling. Really, really good. Like that a lot. Replace 1+0 card with 1. Add this card to your active area. On the next attack targeting you performed by an adjacent enemy, discard this card to gain Retaliate 2 for the attack. Oh, and it's rolling as well. That's also really cool. So you take the attack modifier out of your deck, essentially, and it goes into your active area. Then you get a Retaliate 2. That's really smart. That's a very cool way of giving... Well, just making rolling Retaliate actually, like, doable. Because rolling Retaliate would otherwise be awful, because you would roll into it at situations when you would never need it, and it would just feel, like, wasted. Whereas in this case, it's like, yeah, you get it, and it will come out of your deck, and then it will actually work, or should hopefully work. Also, because it's performed by an adjacent enemy, you will always get the kind of 2 retaliate damage trigger, which is really, really nice, right? Next one is replace 1+0 card with 1+0 stun card. Again, it's a nice kind of like, it's a 1-for-1 swap. So no thinning here, but essentially it's just a strict upgrade on that +0. Suddenly you're going to be getting a stun. I mean, it's a great perk. Especially if you start to thin your deck out a little bit with these, because these both will thin. You're getting rid of the -1s here. You're replacing this, plus this card is obviously going to go out as your active area, but again, it's thinning. So you might have a better chance to draw this. So that's kind of an interesting idea. Add 1+1 heal to self card. Nice if you're playing a tank or something like that. If you're a front liner, which this character will inevitably be, then having a little bit of heal is always a good thing. It doesn't replace or do anything though, so of course it is increasing the number of cards in your deck. Add 1 +2 push 2 card. I mean, this is quite good anyway. Like, so the +2 is good regardless. And then maybe to get the additional value of the push 2, maybe you don't need it, maybe you can use it, maybe you can't use it. But just add additional value potentially on top is good. Obviously, the heal to self is going to be much more valuable, most likely, than the push 2, I would say. Because the push 2, there may be no traps, there may be no benefit. You probably haven't set your turn up to, you know, think that you're gonna draw a push, so, or use a push. You'll probably forget that. So, yeah, not quite as good, which is why it's a little bit more damage than the +1 with the heal. Add 1 +3 card, just big damage. I'm not massive fan of these, but these are kind of like late game perks that you might go for anyway. Add 1 disarm rolling and 1 muddle rolling card. They're quite nice. I mean, just getting a disarm like randomly here or there on attacks is always going to be pretty good, right? Ignore item -1 effects and add 2 +1. So this is kind of like your, yeah, you can wear heavy armor or heavy armor item cards. So this is an absolute no-brainer and may even be the first perk that you get depending on your playstyle and depending what items are actually available at level 1. So that'll be interesting. Once each scenario during your turn, you may perform loot 1. If this ability loots at least 1 money token, you may refresh 1 chest item. That's interesting. Once during each scenario during your turn, you may perform a loot 1. So basically you get a free loot 1 action. That's pretty powerful. It's actually kind of powerful just to have a free loot 1, because quite often you have to take a card with you for a looting action. We'll have to see what this character's loot cards are like, but although loot cards have been improved over time, they're definitely better than they used to be. I still feel like loot cards in general can be underused or not as attractive. So getting just a free loot action, you know, it might be fine. Especially if you could maybe get it very quickly by maybe getting some double check mark battle goals done fast. The refreshing the chest item, I think, is a nice added benefit here. But really what we're talking about here is a free loot. I think, like, it will probably pay off. It's interesting because it will probably pay off earlier more than later, depending on what chest items are available. It really depends on what chest items are available. Because obviously, if you're playing like a high level bruiser and you've got a chest item that's got like 4 or 5 charges on it or something, then, you know, refreshing is whatever. Whereas, you know, early on in your playthrough, if you just got like basic hide armor, that's 2 charges. If you're even just running something like a leather armor or a studded leather armor or something like that, because maybe you don't want to go for the traditional kind of items. You know, maybe you ignore the negative item effects. Maybe you get this, and maybe you just use something like studded leather armor, and you kind of get an extra free activation out of it, right? Whenever you long rest, add +1 move to your first move ability the following round. Ooh, that's an interesting one for a single check mark, huh? So let's say, this is another one where we would have to kind of see what our base movements are like, maybe, before we pass judgment. You know, I think it'd be easy to get swept up in this and say, oh, this is amazing because, you know, if we long rest 3 times in a scenario, it's 3 movement. Yes and no, because there's a lot of times in Gloomhaven where you don't actually need max movement. Also, you know, boots can often do enough to give you like +1 movement. But again, is boots here? I would be very surprised if boots of striding are a level 1 item in 2nd edition. I think we'd be much more likely to see weathered shoes or weathered boots, which is +1 movement from Jaws of the Lion, or I can't remember what the boots are called in Frosthaven, but same concept. So there was only like a +1. I think we'll be more likely to see that. Obviously, this character had a lot of synergy, though, with movement and its attacks. So potentially, if we've still got something like balanced measure, which we had before, which basically was like, do X amount of damage where X is the amount that you move this round, potentially this could read add +1 to our move and +1 attack. Could read that way. So one to keep an eye on. Again, it's really going to come down to what's available in the cards and things like that, right? Each character gains advantage on their first attack during the first round of each scenario. Seems quite good as well. Each character gains advantage on their first attack during the first round of each scenario. And that's each character. That's not just you, which is kind of very interesting. Because I don't think we've ever seen a perk so far, or at least I haven't, that literally just applies to everything. That's weird. Like, usually your perks only, you know, are exclusively to do with you, or, you know, sometimes they might have some benefit to your party. You know, I mean, I can't talk about it, but there's one in Frosthaven that, like, can give immunities to certain things. You know, there's that kind of angle if the character has a very strong theme in a certain area. But to actually just straight up give other characters advantage, it's pretty crazy. But there'll also be quite a lot of characters who want to do a setup turn. So they might just be like, hey, I just want to, you know, I want to play my summon, or I want to play my my passive ability or something for this round, and that happens to be their top action. So the interesting thing with perks, I think, is that you're going to... Are you going to want all three of these bottom ones? I don't know. Can you afford to take all three of these bottom ones? I also don't know. This would almost be a little bit more of a kind of support type ability in a way. If you're playing a tank, I think I like this a little bit more, because it's more like you're helping the other mercenaries more so than you are yourself. Because, you know, instead of getting this, you could just, oh, I'll just replace my -1 with a +1, and now I'm attacking better, right? Whereas this kind of benefits everyone. This strictly benefits you, but it's probably better overall if that's your goal, because you can draw this multiple times in a scenario. This happens one time. Also, of course, if you're playing 4-player, this is way better than if you are playing 2-player, for example. So, masteries. In 3 different scenarios, kill an enemy that you pushed or pulled that round. That's an interesting one. 3 different scenarios, kill an enemy that you pushed or pulled that round. We'd have to see the cards to see how easy that would be. But bear in mind, if you kill an enemy, you would not get the additional push or pull effect on top, right? So for example, if we drew this +2 push 2 and the +2 was enough damage to kill it, the push 2 would never go off. So in fact, it wouldn't really work with this. What is interesting though is that you could push them into a trap and you get credit for that. So whenever you push enemies into traps and they die because of the trap effect, you get kill credit for that. So you could just push things into traps. In a single scenario across 3 consecutive rounds, play 6 different ability cards and cause enemies to suffer 7 or more damage during each of those rounds. Okay, so across 3 consecutive rounds, play 6 different ability cards. I mean, that's easy enough. You're going to be doing that. It basically just means don't use a stamina potion. So that's easy to do. But they have to suffer 7 or more damage during each of those rounds. But it's enemies in total to suffer 7 or more damage. So if you've got if we've got anything like Leaping Cleave, this should be pretty doable for 1 round. Skewer would be an easy round. Yeah, this doesn't sound too hard. Pushing things into traps, that could work. Probably a little bit harder at level 1. So like your level 1 mastery is probably going to be the top one. And this is a mastery that you're probably going to get maybe a little bit later on. You'd have to kind of... I mean, you may just luck into it. That's completely possible. The Brute, or now the Bruiser, also used to have a few like big attack burn cards. So maybe you can just kind of go crazy and maybe like in the final room just burn a bunch of cards. That could also be possible if we have the same kind of high attack stat burn cards like we did before. Okay, great. So let us have a look then at the Bruiser's cards. Okay, starting off with the old favorite, Trample. This was a card that I absolutely loved. Probably my favorite card, actually. Well, no, Skirmishing Maneuver for what it did, maybe. Or Balance Measure as well. But in terms of like, you know, when you first started playing this character, this was probably my favorite card. So the top is attack 3, pierce 3, which I think is the same. It's either the same or maybe it's an additional pierce. Maybe it was only a pierce 2 before, but it's a very good attack against certain enemies. Really, really good. 72 initiative, I believe, is probably the same or in the kind of ballpark of what it was. I think it was a later initiative. Then the bottom is really what we used to love. So it's a move 4 with jump. Attack 3, target all enemies move through with the move ability. Gain 1 XP for each enemy target. So that remains unchanged. So trample, apart from maybe an additional pierce on the top, it was attack 2. Oh, so now it's an attack 3. Interesting. So it's actually even better. It was attack 2 on the bottom, right? So this is now even better in terms of attacks. Potentially with boots as well, you can make this even more. So possibly you could be attacking 4 things for 3 here. Not bad. And potentially getting a bunch of XP as well. Yeah, this is going to be item dependent regardless here, right? They've improved the damage, so it's more damage. A consideration here, like as Dwarf just said, no boots of striding available. So with no boots of striding available, that's like a consideration here that, yeah, this can't get too crazy too quickly. So that's probably the other kind of thing here. It'd be okay if maybe high level Bruiser can do shenanigans, but you don't want maybe your level 1 Bruiser being able to kind of really go crazy straight away. And also it depends if Warhammer or any other hand item that can be melee kind of hand item can be used with it. Power Potion as well will be a great candidate for this. So additional movement boots, power potions, obviously going to be great. But in general, Trample was an excellent card before, and it is still excellent. And despite maybe some items being missing, this is still a incredibly good value burn, in my opinion, in terms of what you can do with it. It is, yeah, it won't let you down. Really, really good. Eye for an Eye. This is an interesting card that I didn't really play a lot. I know that some people did because the initiative was pretty good. And the bottom ability, I think, has been improved slightly here. So it's a shield 1, retaliate 1, gain 1 XP the next time you retaliate this round. I generally like my shielding options on the bottom because this to me is quite a passive kind of turn to play as a top action. It's not terrible, but it's quite a passive action, which I don't love. So the bottom was heal 2 before, right? Yeah. So this is heal 3 now. Create Earth, which I think is the same. Used to create Earth as well. I mean, this is just basically an improvement to this. I was not a huge fan of this card. They've obviously improved the initiative a little bit here as well, with 13 rather than 18. So that's good. But it's not like worlds different. This might just be a card for a certain build. Heal 3 self, and you got I guess you got an enhancement dot there. You can make it an additional 1. It's pretty good. It's good value card. It's just not a card that I was a massive fan of before, and it's mostly unchanged. Skewer. Skewer was always a fun one. So this is an attack 3, consume air to add +1 attack and pierce 1, which I think is, again, pretty similar. Or has this been buffed? Or was it 2, and then you could improve it to 3? The pierce was always on there. You used to be able to add an extra hex onto this, so that's been taken away. Yeah, if it's still the same, then that's fair enough. They've just taken away maybe the kind of the obvious enhancement, because it was a very obvious enhancement to get. Yeah, I mean, like, Skewer was good then, it's good now. Without potentially the enhancement opportunity may mean that you drop it later on, but an attack 4 pierce 1 on 2 targets is probably going to stay very relevant for a very long time. 35 initiative, that's pretty similar as it was before, and a move 7 on the bottom with 2 XP and a burn. So one huge move. Used to be a move 6 burn. Did it? I really can't even remember. I guess that's my memory of Skewer being purely just only ever playing the top. I guess I was like, yeah, there's no reason to ever play the bottom. Maybe you can play it now. It's a move 7, possibly. Yeah. I mean, Skewer top is excellent. You gotta say, honestly, seeing a 7 on a card is always weird to you. Yeah, I see what you mean, because a lot of the time the game kind of caps out at 6, especially for movement. 7 is not a number you see very often. That'd be an interesting, one of those kind of like interesting facts. How often does something have 7 as a value in Gloomhaven? It's going to be rare. It's not an often used value for sure. Okay. Oh, look, there's a 7. Holy cow. 2. We found the second one. It's fine. We can stop now. Overwhelming assault. Attack 7. 2 XP. Burn. I mean, yeah, I think this used to be a 6, right? So this is now a 7. It used to be a 6. Yeah, it's an improvement to it. Again, it was seen more as like a elite or boss killing kind of card anyway. Probably something to do with that mastery. Good opportunity maybe with the mastery to do it, right? 61 initiative, okay. Move, well, not okay, kind of meh. Move 3 with jump and create air. So this was always, oh, interesting. This used to be on Leaping Cleave, I believe. And the awkward thing is that in a round, you'd always be forced basically to be like, hey, is this a skewer or is this a Leaping Cleave round? Because you'd have to play the bottom of Leaping Cleave to get the air, to then be able to play the powered up skewer. Or you would have to go, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do Leaping Cleave. So then you would not have the air and you would do like the underpowered skewer. So you kind of had to pick which one you wanted to do, which one was better for the situation or the scenario. So I like the fact that this has now actually been moved to a card that is kind of inconsequential to that combo. This is actually, it's like one of those kind of like underrated changes that might not seem much. It might just seem like they've just kind of jiggled something around a little bit, but actually it will really impact your kind of economy as a character on what you can do. And it also means that you probably don't want to really burn the top of Overwhelming Assault very early. Not that you would, you know, a smart player wouldn't anyway, but you know, you kind of got that value now of, yeah, we're going to go for it. And then right at the kind of in the last room, you should still have Overwhelming Assault in your hand, because the bottom action is so powerful with getting your movement and your element that you need for your skewer, that this card will hang around in your hand until the end of a scenario. So it gives you actually an opportunity to use the attack 7. Because quite often, like if you get a card like this and then the bottom ability is not particularly useful, when you come to long rest, you're kind of like, I'd rather not keep like the kind of, you know, the all-in burn and the not so good bottom ability. I'm a big fan of pairing kind of situational burns with very functional abilities on the other half of the card that the character kind of needs to keep kind of going, because then it just kind of encourages players to keep those cards in their hand for that little bit longer, and it makes that long rest kind of discard decision a little bit more complicated. Here we go, Balanced Measure. Oh, it's a level 1 card. I believe this was an X card before. Is this some kind of like signposting for new players that, yeah, you should really be playing with Balanced Measure? Pretty sure this was an X card before, right? So attack X, where X is the number of hexes you have moved this turn. Excellent. 1 XP remains the same. And the bottom is move X, where X is the amount of damage you have dealt this turn. Exactly the same as well. I think the initiative is maybe different here. 20. I can't remember if it was 20 or not. That might have changed here, other than the level 1. Seems like it was not 20 before. It was 77. Right, yeah. I had this weird feeling that it was like quite a late initiative. It's way faster. Yeah, hugely. I mean, this is one of our best initiatives that we've seen so far, really. And I mean, this is one of your best abilities. I think it's great that it's been moved to level 1. You know, I feel like sometimes the signposting with like X level cards is that, yeah, these are good, but they're situational. Like they're kind of, and that happened a little bit too often in Gloomhaven, where actually some of your best level 1 cards were X cards and were cards you wanted to build around and create as a really functional part of your build and your progression. But because they were like an X card, and the way the game kind of like explains it initially is like, hey, play with all the level 1 cards, and then the X cards are the more advanced cards, and some players maybe not move to them. I think it's a smart move to make this a core card rather than like an X card, which, you know, should really, like, X cards should really be sideboard type cards or situational cards, apart from maybe, or potentially they could be like build specifically cards for a specific build type thing. Like, yeah, use this one for this build, this one for this build, or whatever. Grab and go. So this is, I think, the same. Loot 1, heal 2 self. Actually, no, it's not. The heal 2 was definitely not here. It was just loot 1 before. And the move 4 was there though. And I think the initiative was probably around the same as well. So the big improvement here is the heal 2, which is pretty massive. This is a really good turn. Move, get a loot, heal up. Like, this is the perfect card to play between rooms. It's so nice to have that heal. Yeah, I mean, it's big. It really makes this card... I mean, I feel like the card was fairly playable anyway as like a late initiative move 4. You know, worked okay with balance measure as just like an attack 4 in a pinch. So I thought it was okay. You got a bit more of a decision to make between whether or not you play the bottom or the top, right? Whereas before, I think it was fairly obvious. Like, yeah, you just probably play the bottom all the time because it was just a move 4. It was good. Now, actually, playing this between rooms could be really, really good. And the good news is on particular scenarios that require loot cards. I don't know if they'll be in second edition, actually. I'd be interested to see if scenarios that require loot cards are still a thing. But certainly, like, this is a card that you would probably have in your rotation anyway. Next, we have Warding Strength. We have an attack 2, Disarm on the top. Hello. Very, very good. You take that all day. 32 initiative. Not the best initiative to have this ability on, but not terrible. You could always, I guess, combo it and go super late and try and disarm them for the next round. Generally speaking, I prefer stun and disarms early all the time just because, well, you have no idea what the ability cards the enemies are going to draw. And some enemies don't have attacks. So, you know, a late disarm when the enemy is just going to sit there and potentially just shield or something or drop a trap and do nothing is not going to be great. On the next 6 sources of damage from attacks targeting you, gain shield 1, retaliate 1 for the attacks. So that's an improvement because it used to just be shield 1. So now it's got retaliate 1 also added to it, which is a nice, decent improvement. Like, because retaliate is a very fun ability, I think. But it's probably not used enough. And sometimes it doesn't really trigger. Like, this could not trigger because it just says on the next 6 sources of damage from attacks targeting you, gain shield 1, retaliate 1. So if it was a ranged enemy, like, oh, it sucks, you don't get the retaliate 1 trigger. But hopefully you could at least get 50% of the time you could get a retaliate trigger out of this. And it makes the card a little bit more enticing for people to play. Just because you're like, hey, you're gonna save potentially 6 damage, and you're gonna maybe do 3 damage back in the process, or maybe even the full 6 if you got the right kind of enemies out. It's gonna be hard to not want to play the top of this though. If you're playing at like 2-player, I think that Warding Strength top is just it's just really good. And this kind of ability is basically not in the game anymore. Like, this is kind of like a dying ability. You'll only see this on very rarely on occasional characters, but you often see it maybe at higher levels now. Like, you'd actually have to actively take it at like level 3 and 4, especially in Frosthaven. Like this kind of ability in Frosthaven would probably be like this would probably be like level 3 card. Shield Bash, attack 4 with stun, 2 XP. I think this is the same. Maybe it used to be an attack 3, and maybe they've increased it to 4, but pretty much the same. 50 initiative, I think, was the same as well. Move 2, shield 1. Excellent. This is what you want. This is a absolute standout kind of card now, just because of this. Move 2, shield 1, 15 initiative, boom. You're going to play this all day, every day. Great defensive card. Yep, it's a great defense. It's just a great card overall. Like, even if you're not playing a tanking build, you will take damage. It will happen. And you're a character who has a decent health pool. So you will be also expected to take damage. You are a melee character. So even if you are not trying to be like a tank, you're not trying to actively play into that play style, this is very useful. Just to be like, hey, I'm going to move in. I'm going to go early. Do something good. You've now got potentially a very good card to play with Warding Strength. You could go 15 initiative, move 2, shield 1, disarm one of the enemies, and then potentially you're getting hit by something else. You're going to reduce damage from that. It's quite an impactful swing to do something like that. So even if you're not playing a kind of out-and-out tanking build, 15, move 2, shield 1, perfect. Exactly the kind of thing that you need. Leap and Cleave. Okay, here we go. So here's our other kind of like premium attack, or one of our premium attacks. So Leap and Cleave is an attack 3, a little target there. This is exactly the same as it was before. 1 XP. I think even the initiative 54 looks a little bit odd to me, but maybe it was around that. I don't remember Leap and Cleave having a particularly great initiative, like either early or late. I can't remember it having any of that. So this is probably around what it was. Bottom is move 3 with jump, nice, and then push to range 1. So that's very cool. That's a really nice little ability. It's a really nice little toolbox ability. A little bit of push goes a long way sometimes. Allows you to, you know, interact with enemies much more dynamically at times. So every party, in my opinion, should include a little bit of push or pull or enemy repositioning in some way. Spare Dagger is the next one. Another little fan favorite. Not a card that I ran massively, but it was good. It was good. I wasn't a massive fan of it. But at level 1, it's a pretty good utility card. And here it's been improved a little bit, I think. So I think the top is the same. I think it was an attack 3, range 3 before. I think it was. 27 initiative also is about what it was, I think. And the bottom, though, I think they've had a pierce added on there. So this was just attack 2 before, no pierce from memory. Oh yeah, no XP. That's another cool. I guess that was why a Spare Dagger was probably quite a well-used card as well, right? Because of the XP. I think like the bottom attack was always quite good for comboing off with, you know, certain other things that the character had later on. As well as like, you know, this character always wanted to just do multiple attacks all the time. So I think that it worked quite well in that sense. For the most part, Spare Dagger remains fairly unchanged. The Pierce 1 is basically like adding half a point of damage. So Sweep and Blow. This was pretty much the same initiative and everything, I think. Was it next card before? I think it was next card before. But this is a bit of a change. So attack 2 with Muddle, but add +1 attack on each undamaged target. Definitely wasn't there before. Sweep and Blow always felt like the kind of worst cousin of Leaping Cleave. It always felt like the kind of the odd one out, the poor left out attack card that just didn't really feel that good. It just felt awkward and just, especially with the attack modifier deck that the Bruiser used to have, it just felt it's not the best attack, really. It was a very undesirable attack and got kind of left behind fairly quickly. 23 initiative, move 4 is actually just pretty excellent regardless. So this card could definitely see a lot of play just because of the initiative is, you know, for a character like this initiative is decent and it's a move 4. So this card will definitely see play. Fearsome Taunt. Attack 3, push 3. Ooh, 1 XP. This is really good. This is really good. That's massive. Push 3 is huge. That is like insane. Especially at like level 1, because some mobs, like some enemies will move like golems and things will move like 1. Like there are enemies in this game that will move like 1 or 2, like living corpses and things. Like you can just kind of like go, yeah, just go away, leave me alone. Like you can absolutely push an enemy way out of focus range with this, potentially. It's a massive amount of push. The bottom is shield 1. Whenever an enemy would attack one of your adjacent allies this round, you may have... okay, this is the same thing. Well, the same as the previous ability. I don't know if the card was called Fearsome Taunt. I can't remember. But this is the same as the previous ability, I believe. Although, did we not have shield before? Was it just this? Yeah, it didn't have shield before. Okay. Yeah, I had a feeling that something was slightly different. So, I mean, it makes it better. I still don't love this ability, though. It has some really good situational scenario-based uses. So depending on if any of, you know, Hale's quests have changed, a card like this in Hale's scenario with the crystal altar thing, like survive style scenarios, escort style scenarios, they can work quite well. Provoking roar. So this is what the old like disarm was on. Sorry. So provoking roar, pull 2, Range 3, Muddle. Retaliate 2, gain 1 XP the next time you retaliate this round. Okay, so this basically sets up a guaranteed retaliate. You pull something in, you muddle it, so it has disadvantage. So even if you do this to a ranged enemy, it will still attack you at, without moving away, because it has a source of disadvantage. Also, probably pretty good for setting up something like Spare Dagger Bottom, maybe. Provoking Roar, pull something in, then potentially hit them with the Spare Dagger Bottom to attack 2 with PS1. Possibly setting up an opportunity to do this mastery. Love how much less vanilla the Bruiser is now. It definitely feels like they've kind of just tweaked a few things. To be honest, out of all of the characters we've seen so far, though, I would say that this character has so far seen the least changes at level 1. Obviously, the thing that with the original character was that there was some really nice level ups that kind of changed the characters in quite big ways. So we'll be interested to see like skirmish maneuver and that kind of stuff, where that factors in here, if it even does factor in. So level 2, we got Intimidating Growl, attack 2, push 2, and you've got a little 3 hex pattern here. So this is kind of like Leaping Cleave, but better. Slightly less damage, but it's got that push 2 on it, which is really nice. 1 XP. This is just good value. You've got the option to potentially put an enhancement here. This could go up to a +1. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. This is nothing crazy. A little bit of an improvement maybe on Leaping Cleave top, because you can get that extra target, and the push 2 might be a little bit more useful than the extra damage in certain situations. So I don't mind it. I think it's okay. 51 initiative is awful, unusable. Move 2 on your next 2 move abilities, add +1 move. Okay. That's quite nice, though. This is a balanced measure combo piece for sure. For the most part, we should read this as on your next 2 move abilities, add +1 move and also +1 attack, right? On your next 2 move abilities, add +1 on your next 2 attack abilities. Well, probably not on your next 2 attack abilities, because you've only got 1 copy of Balanced Measure. So you're at least going to get 1 point of damage at this stage if you use this with Balanced Measure. So I think that's pretty reasonable. The only problem being that sometimes this may end up kind of not being very useful. But this could be a little bit of a build around me type thing for later on as well. If we do start getting more kind of Balanced Measure style shenanigans going on, then suddenly like this goes crazy, right? This can really pump up the numbers and just go to like the stratosphere. It could just go absolutely crazy. So yeah, Intimidating Growl, I think for the most part, the top is kind of like just good. And the bottom seems a very combo piece to us. So we're going to be looking for more ways that this can work for us, but it's certainly not bad at all. A Juggernaut. Now, Juggernaut was the card that I used to take pretty much all the time at level 2 with the original class. So it'd be interesting to see how this goes. So it's a move 2, attack 3, It is a move 2, attack 3 on the top, which I believe it used to be a move 2, attack 2. So this is a strict improvement. Generally speaking, Juggernaut top also became a big combo piece later on in the game as well. So looks like it's going to remain that way. Very, very cool to see. The 34 initiative is pretty much exactly the same, I think. It might even be, yeah, I think it might be exactly the same. At the bottom is on your next 4 sources of damage you would suffer, negate the damage, which is, I think, the same, maybe an extra charge. Maybe it was 3 before, now it's 4, but that is the same effect as it was before. The thing is with this character is that a lot of the abilities will probably feel fairly interchangeable. You know, if you went for this or you went for this, you're probably not going to be very disappointed with either of the 2 options. They're both pretty good in any kind of situation. Obviously, Juggernaut bottom is leaning more towards you playing that frontline tanky character for your team. But the top is actually just really excellent. Whenever you see move on the top of a card, or if you see attack on the bottom of a card, they are obviously out of position. That's not normally where they appear. So usually can end up leading to some very saucy, spicy plays at some point in the future when combined with certain items or with certain effects. So you should always kind of keep an eye on it, because This is, you shouldn't really kind of undervalue just being able to move before your attack, because then of course it kind of frees up your bottom action to then, maybe move away. So you could move in to engage, attack for 3, then you could move away, and then you don't take any damage maybe because the enemy can't reach you anymore or something like that, right? So there's a lot of fun things you can do, as well as this character used to be able to convert movement actions into attacks. And if they can do that again, well, this suddenly becomes attack 2, attack 3, which is, I think, to be honest, probably better than Intimidating Growl, because it gives you the flexibility of attacking 2 targets that are obviously within melee range, but are not necessarily in a pattern. And obviously you get an extra damage, although you may miss out on 1 target. I think for me, looking at these two, I'll reserve judgment for now, because to me, this feels like there could be some very spicy things we can do with this later on. At the moment, it's basically just an extra move and maybe an extra 1 attack if we use it with Balanced Measure. But if we get like another Balanced Measure style ability, then this will suddenly kind of become a very, very strong bottom ability. Hook and Chain was pretty much another card that I always took, which is attack 3 on the top, range 4, pull 3, which I think is about the same. Possibly it was range 3, pull 2 before. There could have been an increase there in the range, I think, quite possibly. The bottom is move 4 if you moved in a straight line in one direction with a move ability, perform attack X, where X is the number of hexes you... Okay, so here we go. So here is like the other thing that could potentially combo. So you could, in theory here, go for a very tasty move 2 on the previous turn. You get this in here. Then you go for the bottom of Hook and Chain. So you're going to move for 5, which is then going to allow you to attack for 5 with the bottom of Hook and Chain, and then you use the top of Balanced Measure, which is now initiative 20. So you can actually do this on really good initiative, which is not to be like, I think before you had to do it on a kind of an awkward initiative. So now you can do it on a pretty decent early initiative, and then bam, you can do an attack 5 with this. So you've essentially got 2 damage already out of it. Yeah, that makes Intimidating Growl look a lot better. Immediately going straight into Hook and Chain makes it really, really good. So the other level 3 is Unstoppable Charge. Attack 3, add +2 attack and gain 1 XP if you have moved this turn. Okay, so that encourages frontline attacking. Really good on 86 initiative though. Like, excellent. Because like this is not the kind of thing you want to play early, right? Because if you play this early, you're literally just going... like, okay, I'm going in, I'm attacking, great, I get to attack for 5, but then you're kind of like just stuck in no man's land. But 86 initiative is the perfect initiative for this ability. Like, it really is. This is a great first turn kind of play, really. You could just sit there on 86, play like some kind of move ability with it. Off you go. Like, your first attack of the game is going to be for 5, and maybe with advantage if you have the... if you have that perk, right? Move 4, stun, target all at range 1, 2 XP, and a burn. Okay, yeah. I think this is similar to what it was before. This is definitely changed. This has changed quite a lot. But this, I think, is fairly similar to what it was before. So out of level 3, to me, personally, this was always the fun part of playing this character. So I think I'm now leaning towards going Intimidating Growl at 2, then going straight into Hook and Chain and just going fully embracing the crazy movement stuff. So I think I'm leaning towards Intimidating Growl bottom, then straight into Hook and Chain, the old classic, because it's still a lot of fun. I do like the change here, though. I think that this makes this much more of a appealing playable card for sure. Whirlwind. Okay, this was a card that I think I used to play mainly for the bottom, and looks like the bottom is mostly unchanged. The top looks a bit better, though. Attack 5, target all adjacent enemies. Gain 1 XP for each enemy target to create air. Yeah, this used to be maybe like an attack 3 or something. I remember it being like, oh, why would I play this over trample or something? I remember that was always like the thing. It was like, yeah, whirlwind's fine, but really I just used it for the movement, and then I think I just always use trample top. -1 level, +1 attack, and wind gen to the top. Yeah, okay, so it was attack 4 before. I definitely felt like it was more damage. Makes it actually a pretty viable burn ability now. The bottom target's all adjacent now. Used to be single target. Oh, yeah, that's true. It's a big push. I mean, this is a great improvement. Also, if you're playing the balanced measure kind of build, I mean, it's a move 4. I mean, I guess it doesn't, the push 3 with all probably doesn't work very well with balanced measure anymore because you're pushing everything away. Or at least I guess you could push everything except for one thing away, maybe. This is a fantastic burn ability. If you're playing 3 and 4 player, if you're playing 2 player, I mean, it's still probably fine. You're probably still going to get at least to attack 2 or 3 things. So you're still looking at 15 damage, which is pretty insane for a burn. I can kind of see what they've done a little bit here with the Bruiser. It feels like they've done a little bit here. Is it kind of like just... There was a lot of burn abilities that were kind of a little bit mediocre, like single target attacks or AoE attacks, which were a little bit kind of, I don't know, less impactful sometimes than some of the other characters, or just felt like a little bit harsh. Also, because your perk deck was rubbish. You just felt like, oh, great, here's my burn attack 3. I'm going to draw a -1 and it's going to do 2 damage. Great. You know, it just didn't feel great. But by pumping the numbers a little bit more, this character's going to feel like it's going to be running around causing chaos, which is going to be good. Push through. This is a new... Well, we had this before, but I think this was on a higher level card. We definitely had a heal 5 self before. Wasn't that like a level 8 or something? Or level 9? I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't a heal 5. Maybe it was a little bit more. But anyway, heal 5 self. I mean, it's an insane amount of heal. It's just not a very attractive kind of thing. You've got the slot here though, so I guess you could enhance bless on it or strengthen. Possibly a good target for an enhancement. If you have bottom attacks, then you can kind of get away with something like this a little bit more. It's like just taking up a whole turn mid-room while everything is going on to heal 5 isn't a great plan, because for the most part you're going to go, great, I'm going to heal 5, okay, and then you're going to take like 2 attack 3s, and then suddenly you're actually negative on the... I mean, you have to heal. Like, you're going to have to heal at some point, but what I'm saying is that I prefer more proactive cards, or I prefer heals that are more little and often rather than big single chunks, unless you have kind of an interesting way to kind of cheat playing them sometimes, or they're just like an insane amount. The bottom is during your next attack ability this round, add +1 to all attacks, and then move 3. Ooh. Hell yeah. I feel like you want the bottom of push through if you're playing skewer hard, if you're playing leaping cleave. You almost want it if you're playing whirlwind, really. You want both of them. I think the thing is that at certain points you're going to want to probably swap out like your grab and go, maybe. And this just like would probably quite cleanly upgrade grab and go. Remember, the class is a legit tank now, so healing goes a long way. Yeah, it does. I just kind of wish it wasn't a top ability. I guess you could play it with a shield bottom or with like warding strength bomb or something like that. So I guess you could just go, yeah, I'm just going to heal myself for 5. I'm going to shield bash, move 2, shield 1. I guess that's reasonable. Skirmishing maneuver. Attack 2, move 2, attack 3. 29 initiative, move 5 with jump, create air. So it's a strict upgrade to... the other card that we had, Overwhelming Assault, was it? Something like that. I mean, Skirmishing Maneuver was great. I think this is the same, or is this maybe was this maybe only in attack 2? Was this maybe like attack 2, move 2, attack 2? +1 attack on the last attack. Cool. Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Whenever you see this type of action, the 3 used to be a 2. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is excellent. 29 initiative is it's not great really, but I think that is the exact initiative that it used to be anyway. So there's literally not much change here apart from this bottom action, which is a huge reusable move. This is great with balanced measure as well, of course. This is an easy way to combo maybe into skewer afterwards as well. So you do your move 5 with your jump, you create air, very easy balance measure, attack something for 5, then next turn you've got your air, you can do a nice skewer, right? Just simple. Like this card, you would happily play it for the top, you would happily play it for the bottom. Obviously the top is going to be probably well, we'll see what the next card is, but it is probably better suited to that build where you're going to be changing this into an attack. Potentially that's coming, but if you're not playing that build, you're still pretty happy with an attack 2, move 2, attack 3. Even if you just decide to stand still and just attack one thing for 2 and then 3, obviously poison and stuff like that can really start to add up. Defensive tactics. The first time each round that you gain shield or retaliate from one of your ability or attack modifier cards, gain 1 shield and 1 retaliate for the round. Ooh. Okay, this is great. So yeah, so if you gain retaliate, you can gain shield, or if you gain shield, you can also gain retaliate. So this is pretty spicy for those attack modifiers, right? Actually really, really well for those attack modifiers. Where are they? So both of these now become super good. Because both of them are kind of just giving you like the other thing that you're missing. So it's like, yeah, you gain the shield, great. Now you're gonna get an extra shield and you're gonna get the retaliate. Great. With this, okay, you got the retaliate, but you were missing shield. Now you're also gonna have shield 1, retaliate 3, right? So it's gonna really, really smooth that out. But it's clever because unlike before, like, okay, so the 1.0 version of this, or of this kind of effect, would be like, you permanently gain shield 1, retaliate 1. Like that would be what this card was. Oh, you get shield 1, retaliate 1. Which is like good. Of course it's good. But it's very vanilla and boring, and you just burn it on the first turn and forget about it for the rest of the scenario. And he doesn't really care about the way that you play. What's really interesting about this is that it really means that you have to actively play as a tank and actually move around and do things. And actually some of the previous abilities that we had that only gave us retaliate. So for example, eye for an eye seriously improves like this kind of big. Because now suddenly it's like a shield 2, retaliate 2. So suddenly like eye for an eye top actually becomes pretty good as an ability to play. I think this is a really, really smart way of making tanking fun. Because the problem with tanking in vanilla 1.0 was basically you just were like, okay, I move, get shield. Or I play this passive ability, that gives me shield. Like there was those characters, I'm not saying those characters were boring because they served a purpose, and some of them were still quite fun to play, especially Sun. But this actually gives you a really more kind of like you feel clever. You're going to feel clever when you actually go, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get this and this because of defensive tactics. Rather than it being like, yeah, I just permanently have this. I played like this on the first turn of the game. I like this. I think this is great. This is the kind of thing that you need to make tanking interesting. And this is a great choice. Like, yeah. I mean, you're obviously not playing this card if you're not playing the tanking build or anything like that. So then you straight away go skirmishing maneuver and you don't even think about this card. But if you are playing that role, hallelujah, you have the more interesting pick at level 5. It is actually the more interesting card to take than skirmishing maneuver. Although skirmishing maneuver is excellent, it's the more interesting card to take. Right, level 6, run through, attack 3, pierce 2, add +1 attack on each undamaged target. So this is like the improved sweeping blow then. Well, I say improved, it's a little bit different. It's like skewer and sweeping blow had a love child. I mean, even if they're damaged, this is still an attack 3 on 3 things with pierce 2, so still probably pretty good. 33 initiative is it's an initiative. Move 3, push 1, and oh, that's quite nice. Range 1 and immobilize. Okay, it's a little bit of sneaky control there. A little bit of freebie sneaky control. That's not bad. Could be quite useful. Not a glamorous ability, but certainly very useful at times. Immovable Phalanx is the other level 6, so it's attack 4, shield 1. So obviously works very well with defensive tactics, because you're going to go attack something for 4, you're then going to get your shield 1, you're then going to trigger your defensive tactics to get another shield and a retaliate. So now suddenly you're sitting on shield 2, retaliate 1, and you've attacked something for 4. Potentially all on 17 initiative is pretty early as well, so not bad at all. To be fair, Immovable Phalanx top is actually pretty decent regardless of what build you're playing. It's an early initiative, it's an attack 4 with shield 1. It's not that bad. Even if you're not playing like all-in tank, it's actually fine. I think this is relatively unchanged as well. Once each turn, you may treat 1 move ability from your ability cards as an attack ability of equal value. Boo! What's this word doing here? Once? Yeah, once. Basically, it was broken before. Now the whole class is good and it doesn't need the crutch. Yeah, maybe, but it's less fun. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it was pretty... It can be pretty obnoxious. You might like change Skirmishing Maneuver top or whatever. It has taken a while for this to kind of come out, but I think it was like level 6 before, right? I think this ability was always fairly late on this character anyway, so it's not like that's really changed. The card's identical except that once each turn. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the once each turn thing is yeah, okay, it's fine. Grumble, okay. It was probably too good. The question is, though, what card do you take if you're playing, like, just Balance Measure, Hook and Chain? Oh, you probably take Immovable Phalanx for the bottom of Balance Measure, right? Level 7, we have Let Fly, which is a very new name for a card. Haven't heard that one before. Attack 4, Push 4, Wound, Stun. Each enemy occupying a hex the target enters suffers 4 damage and gains a wound. Ooh. Like bowling. So I guess the max number here is 3. Because you would need to push like into a hex behind. So I guess Magical Christmas Land here is 3 additional enemies. So we're looking at maximum 16. But also you then have the wound and the stun is quite good. I mean, wounding everything is an additional... like 4, and then the stun with the wound is actually an additional 1 minimum, so 21. So like, even if so, like it's 21 base plus modifiers ish maxed out. I mean, this character's got a lot of really good burn abilities, huh? That definitely feels like a bit of a sub theme on this character. Incredibly good value at what it does. Attack 2, push 3 on the bottom, move 2 on the bottom is also pretty tasty. Oh, works really well with that level 3 card. Kind of works really well. It's like as a 1-2 punch on Unstoppable Charge, right? Also a big fan to line up run-throughs AoE. Oh, yeah. Yeah, an easy way to get this. Okay, the other level 7 is Selfish Retribution. So the top is move 1, loot 2, 1 XP and a burn. I mean, very throwaway is kind of ability, but it's a top at least. 8 initiatives, very good though. That's our earliest initiative so far, I think, right? Move 3, retaliate 2, gain 1 XP the next. So this basically is move 3, retaliate 3, shield 1, basically, because of defensive tactics, which is very good on 8 initiative. That's insanely good. That's an absolute no-brainer if you're playing tank. If you're playing defensive tactics, you snap this card and you don't even look back. Level 8. We have Frenzied Onslaught. So move 2, attack 3, move 2, attack 3. Unfortunately, we can only turn one of these attack 2s into an attack. One of these move 2s, sorry, into an attack 2. But that's fine. That's fine. I mean, we could just move, then attack 3, attack 2, attack 3 on a boss or an elite or something. We could attack 2, attack 3, move on to a new target, attack 3 again, if we kill it, or that was the aim. So it's still fairly flexible on how you go about it. 41 initiative, heal X self, where X is the amount of damage you have dealt this turn. I mean, that's also fairly legit to play in the... That's actually very legit to play in the tank build with Phalanx, right? You play a movable Phalanx, you attack for 4. You know, hopefully you deal 4 damage or more. Then you've got your shield up, you've got your defensive tactics, so now you're going to be shield 2, retaliate 1, and you've managed to heal for 4. This actually combos quite well with any of the big burns as well, right? If you position yourself well enough to like do a big let fly, go late the previous round, then kind of go and get yourself into the perfect position to do a big let fly, and then you go this. I mean, you're going up to full health. So crippling offensive is an attack 2, target 2, range 3, immobilize. This was the same? Move 4, muddle, target, everything at range 1, and shield 1. I mean, again, a great shielding card. Really good card for shielding. Super good. You have a tough choice at level 8 if you're playing the tank build, right? Do you go for like the very reliable, just, yeah, we get ourselves some shield? Or do you go for the potential really nice heal that you could get out of it too? I mean, ultimately, this frees up your top ability to just be a regular attack if you want, which is kind of good. Whereas this means that you have to play an attack. Whereas this kind of frees you up. I don't know. It's close. Early initiative is always going to be good on a tanking character too, right? You're always going to want to go before the enemies, shield up, or you're going to want to draw focus. So you're going to want to be early initiatives. The thing is that I think I prefer the move shields over the move retaliates, because like ultimately as a tank your job is probably to soak damage first, retaliate second. It's funny because I don't think there's a bad choice here for the tank build. Brute force is shield 2. Oh, level 9s, right? This is definitely level 9s. Yeah, so shield 2, after each attack targeting you this round, perform a move 1. Push to target 1 ally or enemy at range 1. 1 ally is kind of spicy. But yeah, okay. Push him away. In you come. Next customer, please. I mean, shield 2 is a really nice amount of shield. This is an interesting one because you don't play a movable phalanx bottom, right, as the tank build, but you do have the card. So it's kind of like an interesting decision because you didn't take that card for this reason. You took it for the top, but now at level 9, perhaps you do use the bottom. It's kind of interesting. And then also, of course, depending on what your attack modifiers are, you could have even more shield and retaliate that you keep flipping from your deck with these attacks. So potentially you're just gaining more and more value. But the problem is you can't really have defensive tactics and immovable phalanx burned. I mean, you're going down to 8 cards very early on in the scenario is probably not advisable. This feels like an ability you'd have to play with to tell if it's good or not. I think it's, I mean, on the surface, it's a very combo heavy thing. Could be very good, but also could just be a bit meh in certain scenarios at certain times. Like against certain enemies, this does nothing, right? Like, you know, if there's an archer that's got, or an ancient artillery that's got like range 5 on you, and you're just, okay, yeah, I guess I move 1 step closer to the ancient artillery. The bottom is add +1 to each of your push and pull whenever you push or pull an enemy at least 1 hex. After the force movement, that enemy and all enemies adjacent to it suffer 1 damage. That's also a passive burn. Just 3 damage, basically. I mean, over the course of a scenario, that could be a hell of a lot of damage. I mean, let's just say, for like argument's sake here, you get this going, and you push, and you get, let's say you get 3 enemies the first time you do it. So that's 3 damage. And then maybe on a subsequent turn, you can do a similar again. Maybe get another 3. This is a fun level 9, chat. Really fun level 9. I think I like the bottom more than I like the top, though. I feel like the bottom could be a lot of fun. Just messing around with stuff, right? Like, think of how much damage you'll do with the let fly and things like that. It's just crazy amounts of damage that you can just output. I mean, like, there's obviously some really fun shenanigans you could do with brute force, but it feels like, yeah, you do it for 1 turn. It could be a really impactful turn, but you do it for 1 turn, and then so you go, you know, then you have to replay brute force to try and do it again. Whereas this feels like you could just kind of play the bottom of this and kind of get to work a little bit, and then it really it would put a lot of emphasis on your positioning. Like, you'd always be like really conscious of what the enemy is doing, like where their focus is, how they're moving. Ambiguity would be massive. You would need to really keep on top of ambiguity. But then you'd be like setting them up for big hook and chain bottoms, balanced measures, just like really nice pushes. You'd probably take like rolling pushes. What's the other level 9? Face your end. So this used to be King of the Hill, right? I'm kind of sad that... this used to be King of the Hill? Kind of sad that I used to love the name of that card. I just didn't like the ability. And I wish King of the Hill was still a thing. You know. Gotta get my Hank Hill references in. Attack 2. Target 2. Range 3. Pull 2. Then do it. Okay, well that's like really value. Look at that. So you can attack 2 things, pull them into this pattern, along with, you know, hopefully one other thing. Pull it into the perfect pattern, then get to execute it. It's like it's like, hey, you've spent 9 levels trying to get the perfect brute force. Well, Face Your End just kind of lets you build it and do it and make it happen. 67 initiative, and the bottom is attack 4, add +3 attack and gain 1 XP if the target's current hit point value is lower than yours. Ooh, that's also really cool. This is good. Like, it's a very solid card. I will say that maybe it's a little bit boring. I feel like the other level 9 though is like super good. Both of them seem very playable. I think Brute Force is obviously the kind of, I guess, the more interesting card overall in terms of this has got some nice combo potential. The combo potential with the top of Brute Force with you know, the bottom of Immovable Phalanx, like we said, pretty good. The general defensive tactics boon that you're going to get with this as well is obviously very good. But I feel like the bottom is probably where I would enjoy messing around. There's a lot of like just fun messing around here. The incremental value of the bottom, this is going to be very good. But the problem with this is, you know, if you are playing, you would probably not be able to play... Is it the bottom of... You probably couldn't play this. Or at least not initially. You'd probably wouldn't play this, and you'd probably play the bottom of this. Then you would be playing a lot of your like move and push abilities and stuff that you got. So like, you know, you would play stuff like run through. You'd play whirlwind. I mean, whirlwind, look at how much damage you could do a whirlwind bomb. It's pretty crazy. And again, it's going to depend on your player count. This is gonna be much better at 3 and 4. This is probably going to be obviously better at 3 and 4. But I think like probably a little bit more viable at like 2. This card is probably the best card if you're playing 2 mercenaries. Probably overall. Because the funny thing is that when you're playing 2-player, trying to get this pattern is really hard, but this card just lets you do it. So, and then you got a really good just kill something tough. Or try and kill something tough here. This class feels like you have some very impactful burns, but you're going to have to choose when to use them. And obviously if you're playing a tank, you really do not have the ability to do that, because the assumption here is that you're going to be the one who takes all of the damage and be around till the end of the scenario, because if you die, the rest of the party dies. So you're kind of like got to be that rock that is always alive. So you're going to use the bottom of, you know, you're going to have defensive tactics up, and that's going to be it. That's going to be your only burn. And for the rest of the scenario, you're going to have to be really good at managing. Because also, what if you take a, you know, a big attack and need to burn a card as well from the damage that you take? It could happen. So that's something that you also need to have in the back of your mind as that kind of character. But if you're playing the kind of more fast and loose attacky style, then, you know, maybe you burn the bottom of skirmishing maneuver. Maybe you don't. Maybe you actually just play like some like a couple of big burn attacks and get value that way. To summarize the Bruiser, I think out of the classes that we've seen so far, This is the one that has changed probably the least. There have been some tweaks to numbers, some numbers up, some numbers... Well, I don't think any numbers came down, actually. Pretty much most numbers up. A few changes to a couple of key cards that were potentially a little bit broken. So we've seen those changed. There have been a little bit more of a conscious effort to make the tanking side of the character a little bit more viable and also a bit more unique to the Bruiser, rather than just feeling like a weaker version of other tanks that are available in the game. It just felt like they were missing a couple of cards compared to them, and it just couldn't really compete in that kind of in that area. So it's much better to see that they've got a more of a unique way of tanking with defensive tactics now, and actually they are much more viable in that role. So when we come to, you know, perhaps when you've unlocked all of the characters and you're looking for a tank, you may actually choose this character rather than being, you know, full in the knowledge that you were choosing a weaker tank than potentially other tanks that were available. Obviously, we'll have to see how those other tanks have changed, because they may have gotten way better, but probably unlikely. This was more of a chance to make this more in line. But the other, like the kind of balanced measure movement kind of damage build seems mostly intact. The biggest change to me that this character had was on the perk sheet, and that's really good because the perks sucked before. So now we actually have a really decent kind of set of perks. These really interesting perks at the bottom here, particularly I really like the extra move. It's quite nice, I think, for a single perk. This as well, like a free loot. It's just really good to get some extra loot. Potentially the gaining advantage on your first attack, I think is potentially some scenarios you may start with no enemies on the board and you may not even have anything to attack on the first round. So, but it will obviously have some good value. It's one check mark. It's fairly cheap, but you will have to pick these as you go. And then these really, really nice perks up here with the rolling shield and the rolling retaliate that will actually combo really well with the shield build. So you still have a reason to attack as a tanking character, rather than just, I play shield top, I play shield bottom, that's me for the round. Or I play heal top, I play shield bottom, that's me for the round. You actually now have a reason to attack because you have rolling shields and rolling retaliates that you can draw, which will be really interesting. So it makes you a little bit more of a involved tank, right? Whereas before you would be very passive. Makes you a bit more active in the way that you need to play. It's really good. Didn't need a huge amount of change, but it's had it in the key areas that it needed it. Second edition in many ways feels like a completely new game. This is a class that I feel like is a lot more like the classic class, which is not a bad thing, because we know that this class needs to be an uncomplicated, easy for beginners. It already had a pretty strong identity about what it wanted to do. It didn't really need that much tweaking already. So, you know, this may be one of the classes that has been tweaked the least. I don't know if any of the people in chat who have actually know these things. This may be one of the classes that has had the least amount of changes to it. It's definitely been mentioned as having the fewest changes. Cool. Yeah, that kind of like felt pretty accurate.
I think it's still, yeah.
Oh,
Scout
that's the blessing from Jeff.
Yeah.
That's the blessing from...
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?